Turtles of Grayskull is finally here. Turtles of Grayskull. It's a Mattel Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Masters of the Universe crossover. It's my two all-time favorite properties mashed together. Something I never thought I'd actually be saying, something I never thought I'd actually be holding. Really wild stuff, and I can't believe that this is a real toy line, but it's a new toy line for 2024. But is it a good toy line? Is it a good mix? I certainly had my doubts about it. And when your two favorite things come together, it's not always like excitement. It's also a little terrifying, right? Because you don't want it to be bad. You like these two things, and sometimes your two favorite things are best left separate and not mixed together. But we've been looking at the announcements, and I've done a few videos about some of the reveals, and the more I see of it, the more excited I got. So now I've got Wave 1 here in hand, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at those today. So Wave 1 gives us He-Man, the most powerful mutant in the universe. It's a mutated version of He-Man. We've got Donatello, the heroic turtle at arms. We've got Leonardo, the heroic Ninja Turtle leader. And Man-at-Arms, the weapon master in a half shell. I want to start by pointing out the gorgeous packaging here. I love the colors, the mixtures of the purples and the greens, but still the bursting red, or the bursting rocks in the background has a very vintage Masters of the Universe feel, but the greens and the purples definitely evoke TMNT. And then I love the artwork up at the top of the packaging. You can see the heroes all feature He-Man and Leonardo, while it looks like villain-style packages has Skeletor and Shredder. And very interesting that He-Man is on a villain package. And I guess that's one thing to note. Like, there's a whole story that goes along with this crossover that's being told with mini comics that comes with the figures. So we're going to talk about that too in this video, because I'm very curious to see how this story unfolds. So is it going to mean something? Does it matter that these characters are mashed together? I think that's going to be fun to check out. The backside of the packaging continues the tradition that has been set by Masters of the Universe Origins, featuring some gorgeous artwork up at the top. You can see on Leonardo's here, we've got Leo facing off against an Eternia version of the Shredder, which is pretty fun. Can't wait till we get that action figure. Man-at-Arms is going up against Krang in a new android body that is based on the giant Megator. Really excited for that as well. The back of He-Man's packaging is fantastic because in the background you can see Shredder's version of the slime pit, which I guess would be the ooze pit, right? I mean, come on. We've got to get an ooze pit toy. That needs to happen, Mattel. That better be in the plans. And the back of Donatello's packaging has him going up against a samurai armor-clad Beastman in front of Castle Grayskull. And then down below that, we've got the cross-sell showing you all of these Wave 1 figures. But worth noting, that's not all of Wave 1, because Wave 1 also includes one deluxe figure. Now, the deluxe figures are going to be retailer exclusives, which bleh, right? Mouse Jaw here happens to be a Target exclusive. Now, luckily, he seems like he's been pretty easy to find. I got lucky. I walked into my Target and there was a whole peg full of this guy, so I was able to pick him up. The other figures, the basic figures, are available at all retail. So they should be at Target, they should be hitting Walmart. They're also available at online places like Big Bad Toy Store, which is where I pre-ordered mine. But these guys here, the deluxe figures, I believe every wave is going to have a deluxe figure, and those deluxe figures are going to be exclusive to various retailers like Target and Walmart. So Mouse Jaw, really interesting stuff. You can see he's a deluxe figure, so he comes in a box, and we've got some extra accessories in here. Plus, we've got a Build-A-Figure of Metal Botto. So that means all of the deluxe figures are going to come with a Build-A-Figure part. And I believe we're getting up to 4 deluxe figures, one with each wave throughout the year. So it's going to take us a year to build this figure, which is unfortunate. So hang on to those parts, and hopefully these retailer exclusives won't be too incredibly hard to find. Beautiful artwork at the top of our Mouse Jaw. And the back of the packaging here has got an homage to the original Trapjaw mini comic appearance, with Trapjaw in the center in his new Baxter Stockman enhanced armor, and he's blasting at Leonardo, and our first glimpse at Teela in this new line, which is pretty cool stuff. And then there on the bottom, you can also see what parts he comes with for Metal Botto. So, I also want to talk about this, Metal Botto, or Mouse Jaw. Sorry, Mouse Jaw. I looked at this like many of you, and I said, why isn't his name Mouse Trap? Mouse Trap was right there, right? Why did we go with Mouse Jaw? But the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized that this is probably the reason why they didn't go with Mouse Trap. I bet there's some sort of weird licensing stuff with Hasbro and that board game that doesn't allow them to use that for a toy name. Mousetrap obviously would have been the better choice, but Mouse Jaw it is. I think that's enough on the packaging. I gotta open these guys up. We gotta look at all these figures. So before we get into talking about the action figures, I do want to take some time to talk about the story with the included mini comics here. And the reason I think it's important to kind of talk about this, at least in this initial video, is because when we think about Ninja Turtles and crossovers, it's really easy to think about just like two characters from two properties mashed together. So you look at a lot of these and you go, well, who's he supposed to be and who's he supposed to be? But it's not quite that exact thing with this. There's a story and a reason for all of these characters to look the way they do. And I totally understand why everybody's brain immediately goes to two characters being mashed together, because Ninja Turtles has a long history of crossovers where that's exactly what they did. The original toy line gave us Ninja Turtles dressed up as Star Trek characters. More modern times, we've seen the Ninja Turtles dressed up as Ghostbusters or WWE wrestlers. But this is different. This is not necessarily just Ninja Turtles characters cosplaying as He-Man characters. They built a story with it, and I want to talk about this first mini comic. So if you don't want any spoilers, skip ahead to where I'm talking about the figures. I'll make sure I put chapter links in the video so it's easy to do that. So every basic figure in Wave 1 comes with the exact same mini comic by the power of pizza. The exception is Mouse Jaw, the deluxe figure. He just comes with this art card here. I'm not sure why the deluxe figures don't get the mini comics, but that's the way it is. So the basic figures all get this brand new mini comic, which is an introduction to the story. And again, spoilers abound because I'm gonna kind of go through this story a little bit. So the story kind of opens up with some sort of trans-dimensional thing happening, and so He-Man sets off to figure out what it is. And then He-Man doesn't come home for days. So Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Roboto go to see if they can find him at the source of the readings of that trans-dimensional disturbance, where they encounter Trapjaw, but now Trapjaw is, well, mouserified. He's got Baxter Stockman tech, and there's a whole horde of mousers. This is also where they discover the mutagen ooze, which, by the way, is kind of blue. It's not like green or even purple like we've seen in Ninja Turtles before. While they're battling the Mousers and Mouse Jaw, this is where they meet the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's some actually really fun interactions here. Like, for one, the Turtles are surprised that Man-at-Arms and them aren't scared of them being big walking turtles. And, well, it's because there's all kinds of weirdos on Eternia. So they discover that they're on Eternia, not Earth anymore. We have some fun interactions about, like, Man-at-Arms never hearing about pizza, and that bothers Mikey, of course. So we get a little bit of a backstory here, where the Turtles explain what happened, and this is where we find out that Krang had identified that there's a source of power at the center of the universe that he thinks it would be a good idea to go and try to take. Of course, he's talking about Castle Grayskull on Eternia, so he's going to use his dimensional portal, which is not uncommon to Turtles, of course. Him and Shredder are going to go try to get this power. The Turtles break in to stop them. Boom! Everybody somehow ends up on Eternia.
We get a little bit of a fast forward here because now suddenly everybody's standing around in Man-at-Arms lab just looking like the action figures do. So we get a bit of brief explanation that Man-at-Arms and Donatello work together to create all this armor for them. Also, Donatello says he's going to upgrade Roboto, so there's Metal Botto. We get a look at Teela here, who was also on the card backs. We haven't seen her figure revealed yet, but also we get a look at Mikey, another one whose figure hasn't been revealed yet. And it's funny because he's just dressed up like He-Man with a blonde wig and everything. The only thing that's weird about this is in this moment, the Turtles haven't even met He-Man. In fact, Ram Man Raphael here actually says, "Who's He-Man?" when they're talking about him. So it's weird to me that Mikey would be dressed up like He-Man, but I guess it is what it is. But the book ends over in Snake Mountain, where you can see Shredder and Krang and Skeletor have apparently all teamed up. We have Shredder now in his new Eternia duds. We have Krang in his Megator android body. And this is where we learn that Krang and Skeletor have combined their powers. So Skeletor has used his magic to upgrade the mutagen, and they're going to use this new mutagen to try to take over Eternia together, try to get Castle Grayskull. Brief appearance by Leatherhead, which is cool. He just looks normal, but it'd be interesting. I wonder if we're going to get a Leatherhead in this line. But this is where they reveal that they have mutated He-Man, and he seems like a mindless monster that's going to do their bidding now. So, next volume, Belly of the Beast Man. Really interesting stuff. And, it's a fun story. Obviously, in a mini comic, you can't flesh things out too much. So some of it definitely felt rushed and jumped around. But I think it's fun. It's fun seeing these two worlds come together. And I'm very interested to see how the story plays out. Now we should talk about the toys, because I'm sure that's what you guys are all really here for. So I'll stop blabbing about the mini comic. We'll get to the toys. Hey, so let's just jump right in with one of the new Turtles. Let's take a look at Leonardo here. Starting with the scale, these are, of course, at that 5.5-inch scale. So they fit in with Masters of the Universe. And one of the other ways these fit in with MOTU Origins is that they do use a very similar body system. So it's going to have a lot of the things that you know already from Origins if you collect that line, which includes all of the removable parts. The head can pop off the ball joint. The arms can pop out a socket there. So this is all intentional. If you are new to this because you're just jumping on because of the Ninja Turtles, all of these parts here, the boots can be removed, the hands can pop out of sockets. It's a modular system that is meant to encourage interchangeability. So now we have Ninja Turtles that have that same function. In addition to that, they do have MOTU style bodies, as in you can see that they've sort of got that more beefed up look. Not that the Ninja Turtles haven't always been strong looking, but you can see the proportions on the body are much more in line with He-Man than what we typically see for a Ninja Turtle. A lot of these armor bits here are removable. You might have saw me just kind of starting to pull that off there. So here, if I pull the hand out of socket, we can remove these armor bits over here. I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side. I'm going to pull the body apart in the middle, which is how we can remove the belt piece here. You'll notice that he's wearing a typical He-Man furry loincloth there. And then on the back side, we've got the turtle shell. But very interestingly, the turtle shell is what's connecting the armor together. So you can pull the shell off, and you can see it's got these little pegs that plug into the holes on the back of the armor. And so one thing that's interesting about this is that the shell doubles as a shield. You can see there's a handle on the inside. So if you want to, you can actually have Leonardo holding his own shell as a shield, which is just another way to kind of do a He-Man style thing, giving him a shield, though admittedly pretty odd. And this is where things get even more odd, because now, of course, we have no shell on his back. And if we want to remove this armor, you can just undo the peg in the back there, And then to take it off the figure, you'll want to detach at the waist. And then you might even want to pop that head off. It'll be easier to get the armor off that way. So now we have as naked of a turtle as we can get. And this does look a little strange. Just the shape of the body is very weird for a Ninja Turtle. You know, obviously they don't typically taper off at the waist like this because they have the big round shell bodies, and that shell can't be connected to the figure here because it only connects to that armor. We've got this sculpted on shell instead that's flat, and it's the same color green as the body. So if you were going to buy these in hopes that you can strip these down and maybe get some more MOTU style or 5.5 style Ninja Turtles, this unfortunately is the best you're gonna get. And it looks a bit weird. I mean, the shape of the body makes them look more like a Battletoad than a Ninja Turtle. So it's a bit on the strange side. Now, quality-wise, it feels great. Good solid plastic, good articulation, all of those joints that detach all pop into place nice and tight. So if you're, again, already accustomed to what we get with Masters of the Universe Origins, it definitely translates exactly the same over to these Ninja Turtles figures here. All right, so we got him all armed back up here in his He-Man style armor. I do like that it's molded in sort of this pearlescent blue, so it's got a nice kind of shine to it there. One thing that I want to point out too with the overall designs is I really like the head sculpts here. That Leonardo head sculpt is pretty fantastic. And to me, it has a very 2003 era Ninja Turtles vibe to it. I don't know if that was the inspiration for the design, but it's definitely what it feels like to me, and I really dig it. I like it quite a bit. The bandana also itself is articulated, which I think is really nice. So you can kind of turn it around there depending on what side you want the wind blowing his bandana piece. I don't know. I think this is a really, really fun figure. It's just very different than what we've seen before, but I guess that's okay. We have so many options out there for Ninja Turtles, so why not get a little weird with this one? His one accessory is this oversized katana that is also styled after He-Man's power sword. And it's really cool looking. It's just molded in a silver plastic, but it's very neat. It's huge. It's an oversized sword. But to add to that whole He-Man element, it also splits into two, just like the vintage He-Man power sword. And actually, this is a pretty tricky thing to get split in half. It actually plugs in really good. There we go. Boom. So now it cuts into two different swords, which basically is how we give Leonardo his two katanas. But we got a downside with this, because splitting in half actually makes those handles quite thin, and it's hard for him to get a good grip on it. You can see a lot of times they're going to fall out of his hands. You kind of have to twist it just right. I managed to do it on this side. Twist it just right so it lodges between the fingers there, and then you'll be able to get it in his hands. But there's a lot of times where you're going to be posing it around, and they're just going to flip right out of his fingers, and it's a bit annoying. So it actually does work a bit better as one solid sword. I applaud the effort. And I think it's a really cool way to like turn Leonardo's two swords into something from the Masters of the Universe mythos with the splitting power sword. I don't know. I always have this problem even with the power sword itself. When it's in half, the two halves, we ran into that with MOTU Classics especially. They don't look as good and they don't hold well in the figure's hand. So Donatello has a very similar look. Obviously, these guys are sharing bodies here, so we're probably going to see that across the Ninja Turtles. But I mean, that does make sense. It's a thing we see in Masters of the Universe, but it's also a thing we typically see in Ninja Turtles. A lot of times, the torsos especially, I mean, they're going to be the same for the Turtles, so they're going to share those pieces there. But we've got some new parts, of course, with a very Man-at-Arms inspired armor piece, which I actually really love the idea of Man-at-Arms and Donatello like hitting it off and becoming instant friends, since they're both the brains and the builders of their unique teams. Really fun stuff. So we've got a Man-at-Arms style helmet. Now, with Donatello, that helmet is not removable. That is part of the head sculpt. And while it looks great, that means that removing the armor on this particular figure is going to get you all the way down, but still having a helmet on his head. So there's no way to pose Donatello without Man-at-Arms helmet for any Turtles fans out there that might be disappointed by that. The armor functions very similar, with the shield being attached to the back of the armor, also having the handle so you can turn it into a shield if you want to. And he's got some really cool Man-at-Arms embellishments, like he's got the little face guard coming off of the torso armor there. Also, he's got the little flamethrower bit on his wrist armor on the left, which is really cool. You'll also notice that his skin tone is a different color from Leonardo, just bringing Leo back in here again to put him side by side. Donatello does have a much more of a brownish tint to the green, very similar to the vintage Ninja Turtles action figures, which I think is a really nice little touch there. And as far as accessories go, well, Donatello does have a bow staff that is a club like Man-at-Arms' club. So you can see it's orange like the Man-at-Arms club. It's got a very similar shape to the top, though it's got a turtle shell on the top portion up there. But it's got a very long staff that turns it into a bow staff. Now, we haven't talked about Man-at-Arms yet, but Man-at-Arms also comes with a club that is very similar to this, but it's shorter. But it's worth noting that it can be combined together with Donatello's to make a very long bow staff. So if you want to do that, you'll need the Man-at-Arms figure, of course. And then you can combine those together. They can merge their weapons together. That makes a giant combination of both of their preferred weapons, a bow staff mace. Really fun stuff. I don't know. I really like this Donatello. I think he's cool. And talk about Man-at-Arms now. Let's bring him in here. So this Man-at-Arms is incredibly cool. I gotta be honest, I felt like he was one of the least interesting looking figures in this first wave. But now that I have him in hand, I can really appreciate all the details going on here. First of all, he's still wearing armor that is much akin to what Man-at-Arms typically wears. We've just got some turtle style enhancements to it. So you can see the one shoulder pauldron over here is a little bigger, but it's got a turtle shell design. He also has a shield on his back that is designed to look like a turtle shell, much like the actual turtle shells on the figures. That comes off and can be used as a shield for the figure. I love the kind of fur on the back up here on the top, and this much larger helmet here. Again, turtle shell design on the knee down here. So it looks like the Man-at-Arms armor. It just looks souped up, which I think is really cool in the sense that if you don't even care about the Ninja Turtles crossover, this still looks like a Man-at-Arms wearing modified armor. It's a really good Man-at-Arms figure. In fact, even the face sculpt inside there, he's got the mustache, but it's a really good face sculpt with the eyes. Everything looks really good in there. Let me go ahead and bring in the standard Masters of the Universe Origins Man-at-Arms. I do have the unmustached head on this one over here, but looking at them side by side, you can see just how much more detailed the Turtles of Grayskull one is compared to this one over here. I mean, we got colored wrist bracers, we've got the extra belt with leg armor here. All of the armor bits look a little bit more detailed. They've got that metallic shine to them. The helmet looks really nice. The face sculpt is a much more detailed face sculpt. This is just a good Man-at-Arms in my opinion. Also, I do like the colors where we've got a bit more of that bluish green here. This almost has a bit of a 2000X influence to it, the Turtles of Grayskull version, but I think it's really interesting looking at those side by side. Also worth noting, these do share bodies with the standard Origins figures. So if any of you were wondering if they were going to utilize the new cartoon collection bodies, it does look like they're using just the standard Origins bodies. So, of course, I already showed you his version of the mace when I was talking about Donatello, but that completes the look for your Man-at-Arms here. And honestly, I love this figure. I really think this is a sleeper hit in this first wave. Mutated He-Man. Yeah, this one has definitely got some mixed feelings going on out there. And I had similar mixed feelings because in this particular story, it looks like our main hero from Eternia is being mutated and turned into a villain or a mindless pawn of the villains of sorts. But it'll be interesting to see how this story progressive. Nonetheless, in the first wave, we get this mutated version of He-Man. Now, this sort of presents us with what the mutants are going to look like in this particular lineup, as we've seen a few of the other mutants revealed so far, and all of them are utilizing this kind of semi-translucent look to the bodies. They're not fully translucent, but they're sort of like that smoky translucence. So it does have a bit of like a shine to it, which is pretty cool. It's this bluish purple color, and then it's got these bright green veins painted on there. So this almost has like that Super Shredder effect, I guess, on He-Man, except for the fact that it turns him kind of mindless as well. He's rage-filled. But you can see he's got the He-Man harness with like the H symbol, but it's black, and it's got these spikes on the top. His hair is longer and like a neon green with glowing red eyes. I like that they added a bandana around his head. It gives him sort of that Ninja Turtles flair, and it is also articulated. But worth noting is the arms are huge. Big, bulky, huge arms that are also a bit longer there, and this is a good time to compare him to the other Origins versions of He-Man so you can see what's going on here. The body itself does appear to be the same body, the same legs. We do have newly sculpted feet, at least on the right, because he's got his toes breaking through his boot down there. But the arms are what are completely different. Look at those big, gigantic arms and hands, which, you know, of course, because these are modular, you can actually do some pretty fun stuff now. You can add these big, giant hands and arms to other figures. It's easy to do that if you want to. Also worth noting, like if you take the hands off here, those spiked wrist bracers also slide right off, so they're not part of the sculpt here. So you can reuse those wrist bracers for other figures if you want to as well. So since I talked about it a little bit ago, I also wanted to show him with the new cartoon collection He-Man, just to show you the body difference there. Because those cartoon collection figures do stand taller. They almost feel like they're a 6-inch scale, but they've got the straighter legs and the taller torsos there. So the Turtles of Grayskull figures are definitely using the standard Origin buck system. For his accessory, he comes with a silver version of the Spike Ore Mace, which, I don't know, that's fine, I guess. A bit bummed that it's just a reused accessory from a different Masters of the Universe villain. I guess they did it because the spikes go with like the design of the wrist bracers and the belt there, and it's fine as it is since this is just some sort of mindless mutant He-Man. I do think he's a very interesting looking figure with those bright neon colors, and the translucent is pretty cool, but I definitely think some of the other mutants that we've already seen revealed look a little bit more interesting, so I'm more excited to get my hands on characters like Ram Man. But this is still fun for what it is. But man, oh man, that's gonna bring me to Mouse Jaw, and this is the one I was the most excited for. This is such a fun idea for a figure here. Now, I do want to bring in just the standard MOTU Origins Trap Jaw to put them side by side so you can see there's still a lot of reused parts going on here, but you can see the clever updates, right? Like they added new feet that have Mouser style feet. Obviously that head sculpt is new as well because it's a Mouser style head on there. The shoulder pauldron with the straps is new, and they gave him a new belt. The body itself seems to be the same, though they did give him a normal arm instead of kind of the robotic looking arm over here, which is an interesting update. Also, the blue is a much deeper blue on that body there, but very similar all around. And this is fun. This is a really cool amalgamation of like Baxter Tech with Mouser mixed with Trapjaw and the things that we know and love about Trapjaw. For instance, he does still have the opening and closing mouth. You can see much more rounded because it's the Mouser shape. So that's actually really fun. Like it's funny because like he's got this red thing up here, which is like the eye of a Mouser. So does he have like 3 eyes now? It's pretty crazy stuff. But he does have an opening and closing jaw. Yeah. So you can do that on there. And interestingly, you'll notice that his arm cannon over here, which is articulated, so you can bend the elbow, you can swivel it, you can swivel the end here. Typically, a Trapjaw would come with a hook, or a blaster, or a claw, but this one comes with a Mouser that just attaches to the end, which is really interesting. Now, I do kind of wish that this little peg here had the ability to rotate and move as well, because it's weird that I can't like straighten his arm out and then also straighten the Mouser out, like it's always in this L shape here. But you can see the Mouser mouth does open and close, and it comes with this really cool flame burst effect that plugs into the Mouser's mouth, so that way you can have him blowing fire with his Mouser attachment. Now, that's not the end of the Mouser fun here. We can actually remove this flame from the mouth, and just like you would get with a Trapjaw, the Mouser itself can pop off of that arm cannon here. you might have noticed that on his belt are these Mouser legs. Now, this is a bit goofy to have those attached there, but the reason for this, if you do not know, is on all of our versions of Trapjaw, he always hung his extra weapons off of his belt on the side, like that. So what they did here is they made a spot for you to plug in these Mouser legs, so he attaches them to his belt the same way he would attach his weapon parts to his belt. So you can unplug those and then plug them into the side of the Mouser to create a full-on little Mouser with a tail. Because that's the peg. So that's the only part that's kind of off about this guy. But this is a really nice little Mouser. It's all white with the red there. Obviously, it's got the opening and closing mouth. The neck also kind of extends on there, but swivels around. You got articulation just at the top of the feet, the legs there, but also the ankles. So you can actually articulate the ankles there as well. I really like this Mouser. This is a fun little Mouser. I just wish there was a little bit more movement in that head, which again would also work if like we can articulate this just to straighten it out a little bit on Trapjaw's arm. But that's fun. I wish we had some extra Mousers in this pack. That would have been really cool, so we can have like a little horde of Mousers to go against the Turtles and the Masters. That flame effect that I showed you earlier is also the same peg size, so it could plug straight into Trapjaw's arm. So if you want to, you can pose him like this, where it looks like his arm cannon is just blasting the fire as well. I don't know, I really like this figure. I think it's really fun. It's just a really cool mix of, you know, these two worlds coming together, with Trapjaw being enhanced with Stockman tech. I don't know, this one's fun. This is just a fun toy to me. And I guess the last thing we've got to talk about here is that this Trapjaw does come with the build-a-figure pieces for our metal Botto, which is Metalhead and Roboto mixed together. So what we have here is one of the arms, which does have a hand, it looks like Metalhead's hand. And then we've also got these 3 arm attachments, which are the regular Roboto weapons. Now, in theory, these should be the same peg size. So if you want to, you can use those with this Trapjaw as well. If you want to plug in these Roboto parts, they're totally usable with Trapjaw, which is likely why they opted to include these particular Build-A-Figure parts with this Trapjaw. It just gives you a few more weapons to use for the figure. But obviously, it's going to be a while, I think, until we get to build Metal Botto, because every one of these Build-A-Figure parts only comes with the deluxe figures, and I think we're getting 1 deluxe figure per wave, so that's like gonna take us the whole year to get to this, which blech.
So there you go. Turtles of Grayskull Wave 1 from Mattel. It's a real fun mashup. Honestly, I'm really enjoying these. I think these are really fun toys, and I'm excited to see where this line goes. I'm definitely on board for the rest of them. I'll be checking them out here on the channel. Out of this particular group, I think my favorite figure, as expected, is Mousejaw. I just think he's a ton of fun. I love the mashup concept with this figure. I love the Mouser. I think that's really cool. But I think the breakout star of this wave, to be perfectly honest, is this Man-at-Arms. I think this is a really cool Man-at-Arms, and for any of you out there who are just MOTU collectors who may not have a full interest in this line or just a passing interest in this line, this Man-at-Arms honestly could work as some sort of like super armor version of Man-at-Arms. Like, it doesn't really look like a Ninja Turtle anything. Aside from the fact that the back of his armor is sort of shaped like a turtle shell, this is just a really cool like alternate armor for Man-at-Arms. I think he's the standout in this wave, and probably he was one of the more least interesting, I think, when they revealed it, just because like when you look at him alongside Leo and Donnie and a crazy looking mutated He-Man, you just don't pay a lot of attention to him. But in hand, real cool toy. So there you go. Curious to hear your thoughts. Are you sold on this idea? Are you still fence sitting? Have you picked these up yet? These have actually been out for several weeks now. In fact, these were showing up pretty early. People were getting them in December, but they are out now. Places like BigBadToyStore.com, which is where I pre-ordered mine. They're showing up at Target stores. They should be showing up at Walmart stores. They should be at other online stores as well. And of course, that Mouse Jaw figure is Target exclusive. So definitely let me know what you guys think. Happy hunting, my friends. And until next time.